Hello everyone, I'm Trung with VTV International. This is the English Bulletin VTV News coming to you live from Hanoi. First, let's get you up to date with headlines. An international conference was held in Washington, D.C. on territorial tensions in the EC. National Assembly deputies focus discussions on fighting corruption to boost inner strength. And later, Dương province continues to lead in FDI attraction. On to the first update of the hour. On Wednesday, Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng visited the Hạ Long Shipbuilding Company, where the fishery surveillance ship KN-781 is currently being built. The Prime Minister also visited the Shipbuilding Industry Corporation, SBIC, where iron hull fishing vessels are currently being built for fishermen in the area.
Vessel KN-781, which is equipped with a helicopter landing platform, was built by the Hạ Long Shipbuilding Company. A sister ship, which will accompany KN-781, is being made by the company and will be handed over in July. Designed by the Netherlands Damen Group, the ships will be used for long-term patrol at sea in combination with search and rescue teams in Vietnam's territorial waters. The modern ship design has a maximum speed of 21 nautical miles per hour and is worth $50 million. During his visit to the shipbuilding company, the Prime Minister pointed out the importance of the project in relation to law enforcement missions at sea and protecting the nation's sea and island sovereignty. The Hạ Long Shipbuilding Company also signed contracts to build iron hull ships for fishermen in some northern and central provinces. Each ship costs between $250,000 and $330,000, but fishermen only have to pay 20 of that amount up front. In his visit to the Shipbuilding Industry Corporation, SBIC, the PM praised the corporation for completing 10 small-sized ships for the first phase of the Fishery Resources Surveillance Force. He also urged the corporation to promptly complete construction with the use of high-quality and modern equipment. He confirmed that the party and state have issued a resolution on Vietnam's sea strategy, in which the shipbuilding industry was required to develop sustainably.
Following now are the latest updates on developments in the area where China has illegally placed its oil rig Hai Yang Shuyo 981 in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelf. On Wednesday, China's ships continue to intentionally ram and fire water cannons at Vietnamese coast guards and fisheries surveillance ships. When Vietnamese law enforcement ships approached the oil rig, the Chinese intentionally rushed at the Vietnamese vessels, and the ensuing collision damaged many facilities on board the Vietnamese ships. However, Vietnamese law enforcement and fisheries surveillance ships remain calm and resolutely demanded that China remove its oil rig and escort ships out of Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelf. Ambassador Lê Hoài Trung, head of the Vietnam mission at the United Nations in New York, met with United Nations Under-Secretary General for Political Affairs Jeffrey Feltman on June the 2nd. The Vietnamese diplomat updated Feltman on the latest developments regarding China's illegal placement of the oil rig Hai Yang Shuyo 981 in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone and continental shelf, as well as the continuous deployment of ships, military vessels, and aircraft in the rig's vicinity. He noted that Chinese ships have intentionally rammed and fired high-pressure water cannon into Vietnam's public service ships, damaging many vessels and injuring people. The diplomat asked the UN and international community to continue their support for Vietnam's suggestions. He also reiterated his call for all concerned parties to restrain themselves from making unilateral moves that could escalate the situation. In response, Feltman said that UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is concerned about the current situation in the EC. Feltman also voiced his worry over the rising tensions and appealed to all sides for restraint and the settlement of disputes through dialogue and peaceful measures in compliance with the UN Charter and international law. Now, China has blatantly violated Vietnam's sovereignty and international laws through its unilateral actions, which have ramped up tension in the sea. This was the message conveyed by a Vietnamese security expert at the international conference themed the Philippines, Vietnam, and territorial tensions in the sea, held in Washington, D.C. in the United States on Tuesday.
China.
At the conference, a Vietnamese representative declared that China's placement of a drilling rig and escort ships in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone is a unilateral action in contravention of international law, most notably the East Sea Declaration of Conduct, or DOC. He added that China's conduct was escalating tension in the region and that incontrovertible evidence showed that China's actions are inconsistent with what it previously said in mutual agreements with Vietnam.
So they said that this is a bilateral issue, but when ASEAN or when Vietnam has asked China to manage the dispute through the bilateral channels, but all by the Chinese. And they also agreed to set up the hotlines between the top leaders of the two countries. So what is the hotlines for? The hotline should be used for a crisis like this, but when the crisis happens, we offer to use the hotline to manage the situation. But the hotline has become the deadline. It does not work.
Mix of positive and negative.
According to statistics presented by American security expert Jay Stapleton of the Kissinger Institute on China and the United States, China is involved in almost every tension in East Asia, a region which is much more disturbed than it was 10 years ago.
Can China continue peaceful development and reach its development goals by 2022 and by 2049, which it has set for itself, if it continues in a path that brings it into confrontation with its neighboring countries?
Representatives at the conference received several questions on the United States' role in East Sea disputes, on the legality of China's statement on sovereignty, as well as its conduct towards other countries in the region.
China has talked about it for some time, but there really has been no concrete proposal. And it seems that as the years pass, China's position hardened so that any joint development will be under terms of recognizing China's sovereignty, which is according to the foreign ministry.
Countries, regions, Eastern Vietnam says that it is not a disputed area, and China make that areas become a disputed area, and then you ask for joint development. For example, like your backyard, someone in your neighbor comes with that. Well, the backyard half of your backyard belongs to me, and now let's have the joint development that. So who will accept that? And
the presence of Vietnamese representatives at international conferences helps the international audience better understand Vietnam's solid legal position and the country's commitment to resolving the dispute through peaceful means.
But all these proposals have been turned down.
The Belgium-Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry held a seminar on the legal and commercial impacts of the East Sea dispute on Tuesday. The seminar focused on the lack of legal basis of China's 9-dash line and the recent developments in the area following China's illicit claims. Attendees agreed that East Sea tensions are having a seriously negative effect on world trade, and scholars at the seminar appreciated Vietnam's resolution to curb tension and agreed that all related parties needed to avoid unilateral action that could adversely affect maritime safety and international trade. It has now been 9 days since the Vietnamese fishing boat DNA 90152TS was capsized by a Chinese vessel while sailing within Vietnam's economic zone. The proposal to preserve the damaged boat in the Paracel Islands exhibition house has been widely advocated by local authorities and people in Da Nang City.
Thousands of people have come to witness the damage done to the Vietnamese fishing boat DNA 90152TS, which was rammed and sunk last week by a Chinese vessel. Mr. Võ Công Chanh, chairman of the Hoàng Sa District People's Committee, announced that local authorities are planning to keep the boat intact and preserve it in the museum.
Once the owner of the boat has completed the paperwork to file a lawsuit against the Chinese attackers, we will ask the authorities for permission to store the damaged boat in our Da Nang Museum and then in the exhibition house of Wang Sa District.
The option to keep the boat as it is was seen as an effort to preserve historical evidence and has received full support locally. The president of Da Nang Association of History and Science also stated that the boat preservation would not only serve as irrefutable evidence in the upcoming lawsuit, but also an example of a man-made disaster at sea.
Conserving the slammed boat would have to retain a memory about a disaster that was caused by humans rather than Mother Nature.
Even the ship's captain is in agreement that it should be kept as a historical relic.
I completely agree with the plan to preserve our ship.
Currently, Da Nang city planners are paving the way to build the Paracel Islands exhibition house. The damaged boat will undoubtedly be a powerful addition to the various documents and articles already displayed at the museum, many of which are indisputable evidence of Vietnam's sovereignty. To many Vietnamese people, the incident of May 26 in the nation's waters will forever be etched into their minds.
In the latter half of our bulletin, National Assembly deputies focus discussions on fighting corruption to boost inner strength. And later, Binh Duong province continues to lead in FDI attraction with nearly $1 billion in the first 5 months of the year. Stay tuned, VTV News will be right back after a short break.
Exotic Vietnam is an intriguing blend of many charms. This land is where all manner of stunning landscapes await like a visual feast, rivaled only by the beauty of its people and their abundantly rich tradition and culture. Here is where you can relive the past in richest color or live it up in the bright lights of the big city. With so much more to offer, Vietnam is simply unforgettable.
Welcome back to VTV News, live from Hanoi. Fighting against corruption to boost inner strength has been one of the major concerns of National Assembly deputies at their ongoing plenary session in Hanoi. Fighting corruption is said to help the government regain people's confidence and thus consolidate national solidarity.
National Assembly deputies agreed that the fight against corruption is vital to driving Vietnam's development, and voters throughout the country want the National Assembly and government to take drastic measures to combat any instances of fraudulent activities.
National Assembly deputies have raised their voice over promoting the fight against corruption. Corruption is considered the enemy inside the country, and we need to resolutely fight against it as we would an enemy from outside the country.
In light of the global economic downturn and tensions in the HC, many deputies have agreed that enhancing efficiency in fighting corruption will contribute significantly to boosting the country's inner strength and consolidating people's confidence.
Fighting against corruption will help us regain people's trust, which is priceless. That is a source of enormous spiritual strength for the country.
When the country's sovereignty is violated, a little money or much money is meaningless. Thus, we need to resolutely fight against corruption to develop our inner strength to protect our country.
The National Assembly has implemented a number of measures to fight against corruption, which were clearly and comprehensively represented in draft laws.
We will build a legal mechanism which can instruct state-owned enterprises to invest properly. We also need to inspect their operation regularly and make all investment activities transparent. That would help us prevent corruption.
People's trust is central to boosting the country's inner strength, And the fight against corruption needs to involve the whole society to quickly discover corruption where it does occur or prevent it altogether.
Moving on now to other news, the Vietnam-Singapore Business Forum 2014 opened in Ho Chi Minh City on Wednesday. Organized by the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry, VCCI, the three-day event is a platform for the exchange of business ideas, tackling current challenges, and developing a bilateral strategic partnership. It focuses on the fields of financial services, tourism, agro-fishery forestry production, and processing and real estate investment. It also offers participating enterprises a chance to showcase their products and services. In May 2014, Singapore ranked third among 101 foreign investors in Vietnam with a total registered capital of $30.32 billion, mostly focusing on processing and manufacturing industries as well as the real estate sector. The country has invested in 677 projects with $7 billion, accounting for 34% of foreign investment in Ho Chi Minh City. Bình Dương Province has retained its position as a strong center for foreign direct investment or FDI through solid solutions in land clearance coupled with investment incentives and a massive reduction in red tape for applicants. In the first 5 months of 2014, Bình Dương attracted nearly $1 billion, which is already 98% of its target for 2014. The province received more good news as recently as this Wednesday morning when Bình Dương welcomed even more investors.
Of the 41 enterprises recently licensed by Bình Dương leaders, 20 are new investors into Vietnam, and most are Korean, Chinese, and Spanish companies who have contributed a total investment of roughly $150 million into industry and tourism here.
The incidents on May 13 were undesirable, certainly, but the Vietnamese government and authorities settled it swiftly. I strongly believe in investment in Bình Dương because things have settled down. As you can see, many factories are built here, a sign of investors' trust in the province.
As well as increasing its investment by nearly $50 million, Japanese enterprises have plans to invest anew in Bình Dương. After evaluating the investment environment here in the June 4th working session with Bình Dương authorities, the Japanese Enterprise Association in Ho Chi Minh City praised the province authorities for bringing about such favorable investment conditions, which have had a considerable influence on Japan's long-term investment there.
We appreciate the efforts made by Bình Dương authorities, and we've sat down with Bình Dương leaders who said they would provide safeguarding and improvements in investment conditions for foreign firms. We will publicize and promote investment here, and we believe many investors will come.
Bình Dương has continued to call for investment in support industries in light of the TPP agreement, as well as shifting investment to the north of the province to effectively use land resources and improve investment value.
We continue to encourage investors to participate in the province's economic shifting and restructuring in the direction of improved technical and production content in order to increase product competitiveness and attract investment into services for industrial and development investment.
Bình Dương timely re-establishment of public order and improvement of investment procedures, as well as its clarity in planning, have not only stabilized the investment environment, but also cemented the province's reputation as an attractive investment location for foreign investors coming into Vietnam.
The Vietnamese Ministry of Finance has approved a decision to apply a price limit on milk productions for children under 6 years old. This new decision will be officially effective for wholesale from June the 10th and for retail from June 20th.
Since June the 1st, several dairy brands have lowered prices from 10 to 30%. Customers in Ho Chi Minh City seem to be pleased with the price adjustment on these essential goods.
Even a 5 or 10,000 Vietnam dong reduction for a box of milk powder will make a difference. I have 2 children and both of them can drink up to 1 box per week. This price reduction is going to help my family. I've already bought 2 boxes. The price of a box of milk formula has dropped 30,000 Vietnam dong.
According to shopkeepers in the city, popular milk brands such as Abbott, Matt Johnson, and Friesland Campina Vietnam have dropped prices by up to 30%. For example, the price of a box of Similac Gain Plus IQ is $6.5, cheaper than last month.
I hope the price stabilization program is effective and prices will remain reasonable so that customers can afford these necessities.
Although the new decision would officially take effect on June 20th, many retailers have already reduced prices, triggering a buying spree. We have introduced lower prices for several milk products before the decision takes effect, assist customers. I hope customers will be pleased and enjoy the lower prices. Customers will always want cheaper prices, but hopefully the price stabilization program introduced by the government will go some way to satisfying their needs.
Thailand's authorities and the Consulate General of Vietnam in Khon Kaen have been working together to deal with the consequences of a traffic accident that claimed the lives of 13 people, including 12 Vietnamese travelers.
2 of the survivors, Nguyễn Thế Anh and Nguyễn Văn Thắng, are being treated at Khon Kaen Provincial Hospital. Officials from the Consulate General of Vietnam have visited the patients, and according to doctors, the patients' conditions have improved.
I have treated this patient from the very beginning, and his condition has improved. Yesterday, the patient lost consciousness, but today we managed to hook him up to a drip, and we will eventually remove the respirator. We have asked Khon Kaen Provincial Hospital to provide the best treatment and support for the patients. We have also moved the bodies of the unfortunate victims to Sri Nakarin Hospital to conduct a DNA analysis to determine their identities.
Ding said the 3rd survivor Nguyễn Hiếu Minh has 2 broken legs and is being treated at a local hospital. The Consulate General of Vietnam in Khon Kaen held a meeting on Tuesday with families of the 12 deceased to help them bring their bodies back to Vietnam.
When I heard the news, I was really sad and I didn't know what to do. With support from the consulate and the 2 countries' authorities, I have been able to finish the paperwork to bring Van Ang's body back home.
The General Consulate of Vietnam in Khon Kaen said the victims were from the central provinces of Hà Tĩnh, Nghệ An, and Ninh Bình.
Up next, we'll take a look at a few online articles about Vietnam.
According to Joseph Yuen, U.S. Ambassador to Malaysia, Vietnam and Malaysia are expected to benefit most from the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement when it comes to realization. He quoted a recent study by the Peterson Institute for International Economics in Washington, D.C., which showed that Vietnam would be the foremost beneficiary in terms of gross domestic product contribution, followed by Malaysia. The Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement is a proposed free trade agreement involving 12 countries, namely the United States, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, Canada, Australia, Japan, Peru, New Zealand, Chile, Mexico, and Brunei, and talks have been ongoing for the past 5 years. Asia-focused fund manager Asia Frontier Capital, or AFC, points out that Vietnam, not the most yearned-for destination for the average investors, has become one of the world's fastest-growing economies. Vietnam's GDP grew by between 7% and 8% a year throughout the 1990s, and by an average of 5.9% yearly over the past 5 years, having nearly doubled its agricultural production over the past 2 decades and become one of the world's largest exporters of rice and shrimps. Vietnam is moving from an economy based on manual labor and agriculture to an economy based on manufacturing and skilled labor, AFC said in its newsletter for April. Our third news of the day comes from undercurrentnews.com. Australia's aquaculture announced that barramundi from its farm in Vietnam has received the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch Best Choice ranking. The product is the first to fish grown in open marine net bands to get the green ranking, said Australians. The Seafood Watch program assesses a wide range of potential impacts, including feed efficiency, habitat and water quality impacts, disease, use of chemicals, and an escape risk in its ranking. Founded in 2004, Australia's aquaculture has been operating in central Vietnam since 2007. Low-density stocking, lack of chemical usage, and closely monitored feeding all contributed to the best choice ranking, said the company.
BizHub.vn reports that the State Bank of Vietnam and commercial banks will reserve loans totaling 10 trillion Vietnam dong, or $476.2 million, to assist fishermen facing difficulties due to the ongoing EC tensions. SBV Governor Nguyễn Văn Bình announced this on the sidelines of a National Assembly session on Monday, following a government plan to help fishermen build and upgrade vessels for offshore fishing. The terms of the loans will be 10 to 15 years. The banks will offer an interest rate of 5% per year, and with the government subsidy of 10%, the fishermen will have to pay an interest rate of only 3%. Vietnam raked in some $58.51 billion from its exports in the first 5 months of this year, a year-on-year hike of 15.4%, making this year's export targets feasible. In May alone, the export turnover rose by 3.5% from the same month last year to $12 billion. The proportion of fossil fuels and minerals in the total exports reduced, while industrialist processed and agro-aquatic exports climb. This trend is closely aligned with the national export strategy.
And that's also the last piece of news we have for you in this hour. Before saying goodbye, let's take a quick look at today's weather forecast. This is the end of VTV News for this hour. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye for now from Hanoi.